Hey everyone, welcome back to the Deep Dive. We're diving into a topic today that I know is really important to a lot of our listeners, and that is how to find connection with other men while still keeping things discreet.
Yeah, and that's completely understandable. There are so many reasons why someone might want to keep their personal life private.
Exactly. I mean, whether it's because of, your relationship status, your family, your community, your job, whatever it might be, there's absolutely no shame in wanting to keep things under wraps. And honestly, that's exactly what drew us to this particular guide on menmeetmen.com, specifically the section titled How Discreet Men Can Meet Other Men Safely.
It really is like a roadmap for navigating this whole world and in a way that, feels really safe and private.
Yeah, so it's not just about giving you options, but also about making sure you can do it, confidently and without putting yourself at risk.
Right. So in this deep dive, we're going to unpack the most important parts of this guide, share the key takeaways, and hopefully give you the tools to make informed decisions that are right for you.
And one thing that really stood out to us was how the guide starts off by addressing the reasons why discretion might be so important for men in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, it really acknowledges that there are a lot of different reasons why someone might want to keep things quiet.
Yeah, for some people, it's about being in a heterosexual marriage or a long-term relationship where, they're not ready or maybe don't even want to come out.
Right. And for others, it's about living in a community or a family environment that's not exactly, shall we say, open-minded.
Definitely. And it's not always easy to just, be yourself when you're worried about the reactions of the people around you.
And then you've got the whole career angle too, right? I mean, there are plenty of professions where being openly gay or bisexual could have some pretty serious repercussions.
Absolutely. And the guide really acknowledges that, sometimes discretion is about protecting your livelihood, your reputation.
And even beyond those external factors, there's also just the personal side of things, right? I mean, not everyone is ready to come out or even label themselves, and that's totally okay.
Yeah. It's about owning your own journey, your own timeline.
Exactly. And the guide actually says this really explicitly. It says there's no shame in wanting to keep things private. And I think that's such an important message to start with.
Yeah, it's like permission to just be yourself and find connection on your own terms.
Absolutely. So with that in mind, let's move on to the practical side of things, like how to actually meet other men discreetly.
So the guide breaks down the options into a few main categories, starting with real-world places, like physical spaces.
So first up, we've got gay saunas, which, have been around for ages.
Yeah, and the guide points out that one of the biggest draws of saunas is the anonymity. Like, you don't need to create a profile or share a bunch of personal details.
Right. It's all very in the moment, which can be appealing for someone who wants to keep things discreet.
And there's no digital trail to worry about either, which is a big plus for some people.
Then there are swingers clubs, which might not be the first thing that comes to mind for everyone, but the guide specifically mentions that many of them are quite welcoming to bi or curious men.
Yeah, and that makes sense. Swingers clubs are often about exploring different kinds of connections and experiences in a safe and consensual environment.
And for some guys, that might feel more comfortable than going to a more explicitly gay bar or club.
Yeah, there's less pressure to, fit into a certain mold or label yourself in a certain way.
And then there are what are often called cruising areas, which are basically public places where men go to hook up.
But the guide emphasizes the importance of choosing known locations, places that are, established and relatively discreet.
Right. And I think the key word there is discretion, because you definitely want to be mindful of your surroundings and avoid anything that might draw unwanted attention.
Yes, safety is paramount, especially when you're talking about meeting someone in a public place.
Yep. Now let's shift gears and talk about online options, because obviously the internet has opened up a whole new world of ways to connect.
And there are a ton of hookup apps out there. But the guide specifically mentions Scruff and Atom for Atom as examples of platforms that offer features for private browsing.
So what exactly does that mean? Like, what kinds of features make these apps more discreet?
Well, for one thing, many of them have options to browse profiles anonymously, so you can check someone out without them knowing you've seen their profile.
Oh, that's interesting. So it's kind of like lurking, but in a good way.
Exactly. And some apps even let you create private photo albums so you can control who sees certain pictures.
And of course, the guide also recommends using a faceless or discreet profile picture, which just seems like common sense.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not ready to show your face, there's no need to. And there are plenty of ways to create a profile that's still, attractive and intriguing without revealing your identity.
And I think it's worth mentioning that the guide also stresses the importance of not linking your app profile to your social media accounts.
Yeah, that's crucial because it prevents people from easily finding out more about you than you're comfortable sharing.
Now let's talk about protecting your identity online, because that's a huge part of staying discreet.
And this is where the guide gets really practical, like offering specific steps you can take to safeguard your information.
So first and foremost, it recommends creating a separate email address just for dating or hookup apps.
Yeah, that's just good online hygiene in general, keeping your personal and professional life separate from your dating activities.
And then there's the issue of phone numbers, and the guide suggests using a secondary number, like through Google Voice or a burner app.
Yeah, because that way you don't have to give out your real number right away, which adds an extra layer of privacy.
And maybe the most obvious tip, but still worth mentioning, is to avoid sharing personally identifying information like your full name, your workplace, or your daily schedule.
Yeah, it's easy to let those details slip out in conversation, but it's important to be mindful of what you're sharing, especially with someone you've just met online.
And the guide actually gives a really strong warning here. It says, if someone pushes you to reveal more than you're comfortable with, walk away.
Yeah, that's a red flag. And it's a sign that this person might not be respecting your boundaries.
So let's say you've connected with someone online and you're ready to meet up in person.
Well, the guide has some advice for that too, emphasizing the importance of choosing safe and neutral locations.
Like what, for example?
Well, for starters, it suggests booking hotel rooms under a first name only, so there's less of a paper trail linking back to you.
That's clever, and it also recommends choosing venues with private entrances, like gay saunas or clubs, so you can come and go without being seen.
And even little things like parking your car a short distance away from the meeting spot can make a difference.
And choosing less busy times to visit these places, when there are fewer people around.
Yeah, it's all about minimizing the risk of being recognized or spotted by someone you know.
And then there's the whole issue of communication and setting boundaries, which is so important in any kind of dating or hookup scenario.
And the guide is very clear on this point. It says, tell potential connections that you're discreet from the start.
Like right up front, no beating around the bush.
Exactly, because that way everyone knows where they stand and there's no room for misunderstandings.
And it also advises against being pressured into video calls, sharing face pics, or giving out personal details if you're not comfortable.
You're in control of what you share and when you share it, and no one should make you feel obligated to do anything that compromises your privacy.
And this is where messaging apps with disappearing message features can come in handy, like Telegram or Signal.
Yeah, those apps give you more control over your digital footprint, and they can make you feel more secure knowing that your conversations aren't being permanently stored.
The guide even offers this little litmus test. It says, if they respect your privacy, they're worth meeting. If not, move on.
Which I think is great advice, because if someone isn't willing to respect your boundaries early on, it's unlikely to get better later.
Now, even if you're being careful about what you share online, there's still the issue of minimizing your digital footprint in general.
And the guide has some tips for that too, like disabling autosave features for photos and chat screenshots.
So that those things aren't automatically saved to your device.
Exactly. And it also recommends regularly clearing your chat history and app data, just to reduce the amount of information that's out there.
And it specifically says to avoid storing any sensitive information in cloud storage services like Google Drive or Dropbox.
Because even though those services can be convenient, they can also be vulnerable to hacking or data breaches.
And as the guide so aptly puts it, the fewer traces you leave behind, the more control you retain.
It's about being proactive and taking steps to manage your online presence.
Now, unfortunately, there are always people out there looking to take advantage of others, so the guide also warns about the potential for scams and setups.
Yeah, and it mentions a few specific threats, like catfishing, blackmail, and fake meetups.
Which can all be really dangerous, so it's important to be aware of the risks.
And to trust your gut feeling. If something seems too good to be true or just feels off, it's probably best to err on the side of caution.
The guide also lists some red flags to watch out for, like aggressive behavior, sudden requests for money or personal information, or a refusal to meet in a safe, neutral location.
Those are all signs that something might be fishy.
And finally, the guide wraps up by talking about long-term privacy considerations, emphasizing that discretion is an ongoing practice, not just a one-time decision.
It's about developing habits that help you maintain your privacy over time.
So, some of the suggestions include using incognito mode when browsing online, avoiding meeting connections in areas where you might be recognized, and being cautious about arriving and leaving alone.
And even things like dressing in a way that doesn't draw attention or being vague about your daily schedule can make a difference.
The guide really drives this point home with a powerful statement. It says, discretion is a habit, not just a one off decision.
It's about constantly being aware and making choices that protect your privacy.
So the guide concludes by reiterating that men who choose discretion have every right to explore their desires privately and safely.
And that taking these precautions isn't about being paranoid or fearful. It's about taking control of your personal life and your privacy.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive into the menmeetmen.com guide, let's recap the key takeaways for you.
We've talked about the various ways to meet other men discreetly, both in person and online. And we've covered the importance of protecting your identity and setting clear boundaries.
We've also emphasized the need for ongoing vigilance and the development of long-term privacy habits.
Ultimately, it's about feeling empowered and informed so you can navigate this aspect of your life with confidence and peace of mind.
So, with all that said, here's a final thought for you to ponder. What one step can you take today to increase your level of discretion and take more control of your personal journey?
And if you're looking to explore any of these topics in more depth, the guide we've been discussing provides links to further reading on a variety of related subjects, including the pros and cons of different meeting methods, safety tips for closeted men, navigating same-sex desire within a marriage, and much more.
So, we encourage you to check out those resources and continue your own exploration.
And as always, thanks for joining us on the deep dive.
We'll see you next time.
Bye.